Why chickens lay the eggs first? I grew up on a farm in rural South Carolina, and almost all the wisdom that I possess has come from the earth. Things that I've been told by grandparents, things that they read in the Farmer's Almanac that tell you when you're supposed to plant corn, when you're supposed to plant grass and let the corn have a rest. It's like you just come by a knowledge and a wisdom and an imagination in that environment that you wouldn't get from anywhere else. If any of you have ever been blessed to watch chickens give birth, when chickens lay eggs, most of the eggs that they lay are just eggs. It's okay, well, I'm just keeping things going here. I'm not ready to have children yet. But when a chicken lays an egg and they won't get up off of it, you know that they know that they're pregnant. And they understand that before I have this baby, I've got to lay this egg and I've got to sit on it for 21 days. That's exactly how long it takes without fail. It takes 21 days and then you got new baby chickens. Now what that means in this context is I've learned many times that there's no such thing as a bad idea. I've never heard a bad idea. Where ideas fail, though, is when you confuse the idea with a plan that will execute itself. And I'll say that again. Whenever you hear an idea that is confused with the plan that will execute that idea, that's probably the only time an idea won't work. Other than that, all ideas are great. Take that one for free. All of them are great. At a charter school, any startup environment, you're going to hear lots of ideas, but you may not always hear plans to execute the idea, and you have to learn to discern the difference. You actually got to learn how to challenge that difference. Comprehensive, coherent strategic plans catalyze sound budgets and not the other way around. You may have studied in this class or even in your school. Is everybody familiar with Title I funding? Yes. All right.
That should have been resounding. Everybody familiar?
Yes. All right. Very familiar. But let me depart and ask a question. What is it the first title of? What is Title I the first title of?
Nobody knows.
This is very important. This might be one of the most important things I dropped. Title I is the first title in a piece of legislation commonly known as NCLB. No Child Left Behind. Passed in 2000. However, Title I has been around for much longer than 2000. It just so happens that Title I is also the first title of an old piece of legislation called ESEA, Elementary and Secondary Education Act. So for those of us who think that school accountability was invented in 2000, that is almost like, no, I won't go there. My kids hear music all the time, and they swear up and down, oh, that song just came out. Like, no, man, I'm a young old man. That song's been around a few different times, man. It's actually been sampled a few times, so me and the kids have that fuss all the time. But yeah, Title I is a piece of legislation, a special piece of legislation that says, all right, there has to be money set aside to help, extra help, for kids who live in impoverished areas to learn how to read and write better. That's all Title I is, but that's everything that Title I is. And Title I funds a lot of things in a lot of places. In my school, and probably in several other schools, Title I is kind of an afterthought. It's seen as a budget supplement. Let's get that money and let's spend it. But what are we going to spend it on? Well, we don't know. We're going to spend it on whatever we need. Well, do you know what you need? Well, no, but I'm sure we're going to need something. Well, you know, if you sit down and figure out what you need, that money probably goes a lot farther, don't you think? Oh, you always think. Well, I do work out of school, don't I? Yeah, that's what we do, is we figure out how we're going to do things, and we do them the way that they ought to be done, and then they kind of go a little better. So Title I is something that I kind of fell into probably this time last year, where we had our Title I coordinator leave in the middle of the year. And when I picked up the responsibilities, I was handed a budget, and I had no idea how we got that budget, what insight and what planning led to that budget. So I just kind of had to make sure we complied and got that money spent. Now, this year, when I had the program for the whole year, that gave me the chance to say, all right, well, if we can actually think ahead of spending the money, what is it that we will actually do? We know we're engaged in the business of teaching and learning, We know we want to use the Title I funding to improve the way the kids read and write, but now let's talk about specifically how we want to do that. And you'd be surprised at how asking that question will lead to the discussion that generates a pretty decent approach to things. So this year we decided to spend the money on, I know one line item allows us to bring in principals who've been there, seen it, and done it, to talk to our teachers and coach our teachers up. So that's what we use to bring Dr. Hill in when she comes over to help us. There's a line item that allows our principal to use a tool called PD 360. Anybody ever heard of that? It's a professional development tool that allows him to evaluate and assign videos for teacher remediation, teacher coaching, to help different strategies, behavioral. It's a pretty good tool, but Title I pays for that tool for us.
It's a technology piece. Go ahead. This is technology, all done through technology. Go ahead.
There's another tool that we bought from a company called Turning Technologies. They make these little handheld remotes that operate over the airwaves. And if you imagine, I'm in a class and you're all my students, and I ask you what Title I is, and I show multiple choice answers from a PowerPoint presentation, and you can point your remote at the screen and choose your answer, and then I can look at my computer and see how many of you actually correctly understand what Title I is, and if you don't, then I know I might need to reteach that one and go on a little bit. If you all understand it, then I'm on to the next thing. Very powerful tool, very simple concept. We pay for that with our Title I money. We have a media center that we had to close down for a year, which means we're probably behind on getting the number of titles that we need in the media center to get our SACS accreditation. You gotta have a certain number of books in your media center to be accredited by SACS. Well, we can use that Title I money to buy books other than textbooks. You can't use Title I money to buy a textbook, you'll go to jail. But you can use it to buy books other than textbooks. You can use it to buy periodicals. You can use it to buy teacher desk references as long as they're not your textbooks. So, make a short story shorter, planning in that simple example is the difference between spending money and utilizing money in a strategic fashion. And you don't want to ever get caught in a situation where all you're trying to do is burn through the cash by the end of the year because you're cheating your kids in that situation. Let's go on to the next slide.